A young nurse donates blood to a stranger, unaware he's a millionaire single dad who will soon. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The fluorescent lights hummed quietly as Mia Monroe walked down the sterile white halls of Westbridge Medical Center. The hospital was quiet at this hour, the bustle of the day long gone, replaced by the soft footsteps of a few remaining staff members finishing their shifts. Mia had been a nurse here for nearly 3 years, and yet every time she walked these halls, she felt as if she was a part of something bigger, something meaningful. She had been raised to believe that helping others was the truest form of fulfillment, and it was something she carried with her every day. As she walked toward the blood donation station, her mind was already on the next task ahead, checking on her patients, handling paperwork, and squeezing in a moment to grab a quick snack in the break room. But that was before she noticed him. Sitting alone in a corner of the waiting area, a man in his early 30s appeared out of place. His clothes were well worn, his jacket a little too thin for the chilly hospital air, and his shoes looked like they had seen better days. He was hunched over slightly, elbows resting on his knees, and he stared at the floor as if lost in thought. Mia couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. He looked like someone who had fallen on hard times. Mia walked up to the blood donation station, where a technician greeted her with a smile. "Ready to donate, Mia?" the technician asked as she prepped the equipment. Mia nodded but couldn't help glancing back at the man in the corner. There was something about him. As she sat down, the needle was carefully inserted into her arm. The blood began to flow steadily, but Mia's mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about that man. What was his story? Did he need help? As she finished her donation, she was handed a glass of water and a small snack to help her recover. She stood up and made her way to the exit when she noticed the man again, still sitting in the corner. Without thinking, she walked over to him, offering a friendly smile. "Hey there, are you all right?" she asked, her voice gentle. He looked up, startled, as if he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. His eyes were a deep blue, tired but grateful. "Oh yeah, just a little tired. I had a rough day." His voice was low, almost hesitant. Mia sat down next to him, her curiosity piqued. "Do you need any help? I'm a nurse here. I could see if I can find someone to talk to you, or maybe help with anything." The man's lips curled into a slight smile, but he quickly looked away. "I appreciate that. Just been a tough time lately." Mia nodded understandingly. She didn't want to push him too much, but could sense that he was carrying a lot more than just a physical ailment. "Well, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here," she said before standing up. "Take care of yourself." As she walked away, she didn't realize that this simple act of kindness would change her life forever. Mia thought about him on and off for the next few days. There was something about him, his eyes, the way he held himself, that made her feel as though she had only scratched the surface of his story. Little did she know, that man was more than just a stranger in need of help. His name was David Carter, and he wasn't just any man. He was a millionaire, a single dad, and soon enough, his path would cross hers in ways she could never have imagined. As Mia continued her shifts at Westbridge Medical Center, her thoughts kept drifting back to the man she had helped, David Carter. She had seen him a few times since their brief encounter, but there was always a certain distance between them. He would occasionally nod a quiet thank you as she passed by, but never sought out further interaction. Still, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to his story, something she hadn't quite understood. She had been a nurse long enough to recognize when a patient needed more than just medical care. They needed someone to talk to, someone who would listen, truly listen. And David, she was sure, was one of those people. A week passed, and one evening, just as her shift was ending, Mia spotted David in the hospital's waiting area again. This time, he wasn't alone. A woman was sitting next to him, a blonde with a stern face and an air of importance about her. Mia could see them speaking in hushed tones, but she didn't want to intrude. However, as she walked past, David caught her eye. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, and for some reason, that simple gesture made Mia feel like she needed to approach. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over to where he sat. "Hi, David," Mia said softly, smiling. David looked up, his eyes a bit wider than usual, but he quickly recovered. Hey, Mia, he replied with a smile. The woman beside him gave Mia a quick, almost dismissive glance before returning her focus to her phone. I didn't expect to see you again, Mia continued, trying to keep the conversation light. How are you feeling? David shifted slightly in his seat. Better, thanks to you, he said, his voice warm but guarded. Mia could tell he was trying to maintain a sense of normalcy, but there was something beneath the surface, something that didn't quite match his calm exterior. That's good to hear, Mia replied. She glanced at the woman sitting beside him. Who's this? She asked, her curiosity piqued. David cleared his throat, then spoke. This is Natalie, my business partner, he said, his tone slightly defensive. We've been working on some things together. Mia nodded, though something about the way David spoke made her wonder. She had never heard him mention a business partner before. Nice to meet you, Natalie, Mia said politely, her eyes meeting the woman's cold gaze for a moment. Natalie didn't respond with much more than a brief, tight smile before returning to her phone. Mia didn't like the way the woman ignored her, but she let it slide. Well, I won't keep you, Mia said, standing up. I just wanted to check in. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. David's eyes softened, and he nodded. I appreciate that, Mia, he said sincerely. But before Mia could turn away, David spoke again. Actually, I could use your help with something. Mia paused and turned back to him. What is it? I'm not sure how to ask this, but, he hesitated, then continued. I'm having some trouble with my daughter. She's been difficult lately. I could use someone to talk to, someone with experience. Mia's heart softened. She had always been good with children, and she could tell this meant a lot to him. Of course, she said without hesitation. I'd be happy to help. I've worked with children before, and I'd be glad to offer some advice. David's expression shifted, a mix of relief and gratitude crossing his face. Thank you, Mia. I don't know who else to turn to. As Mia left the waiting area and made her way home, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Something about David's request seemed off. Was he really just looking for advice, or was there something more to this? She wasn't sure, but she knew that she couldn't turn her back on him. The next day, she met with David at a nearby coffee shop, away from the hospital. As they sat across from each other, the tension between them was palpable. David was dressed in a simple sweater and jeans, trying his best to blend in, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. So, what's going on with your daughter? Mia asked, trying to keep the conversation focused. David sighed deeply, running a hand through his dark hair. It's just, she's been acting out. I don't know what to do. She's always been a bit difficult, but lately it's been worse. She's pushing me away, and I can't figure out why. Mia nodded thoughtfully. How old is she? She's 9, David replied, his voice tinged with worry. She used to be so sweet, but now she's distant, and I don't know what happened. Mia listened carefully, offering advice where she could. She spoke from experience, having worked with children in the past, and she tried to reassure David that things would get better with time. But there was still something nagging at her. She couldn't help but wonder if David was hiding the truth about his life, about who he really was. Little did Mia know, the truth about David was about to come crashing into her world, and everything she thought she knew about him would be turned upside down. It's been a week since Mia last spoke to David, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he wasn't telling her. The more she thought about it, the more certain she became that David was hiding something about his life, something important. His sudden vulnerability, the way he had confided in her about his daughter, seemed too sudden, too raw. Mia was used to reading people, and there was a wall around David, one that she hadn't been able to break through yet. Despite her curiosity, she chose to keep her distance for a while, focusing on her patients and her work. However, one fateful morning, she received a call that would change everything. It was from David. Mia, I need to talk to you, he said, his voice sounding urgent and shaky. Can you meet me at the hospital? It's important. Mia immediately felt a sense of dread wash over her. She had never heard David sound like this before. Of course, I'll be there in a few minutes, Mia replied, her heart pounding in her chest. When she arrived at the hospital, she found David waiting in the hallway outside the intensive care unit. His expression was grave, his usual calm demeanor completely gone. David, what's going on? Mia asked, her voice laced with concern. He looked at her, his eyes filled with anxiety. I've been lying to you, Mia. I didn't tell you the whole truth. I'm not just some businessman struggling to connect with my daughter. I'm the CEO of Carter Enterprises, one of the largest companies in the country. And my daughter, his voice trailed off as he struggled to find the right words. Mia was taken aback, her mind racing. You're the CEO of Carter Enterprises? She asked, trying to process the information. Yes, David replied, nodding slowly. And my daughter, Lily, she's in critical condition right now. She's been in a car accident, and we don't know if she's going to make it. The words hit Mia like a ton of bricks. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. All this time, David had been hiding the truth about his identity. But now, his daughter was in danger, and that was all that mattered. I'm so sorry, Mia said, her voice softening. Is there anything I can do? David looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and desperation. I don't know what to do, Mia. I've been so caught up in work, in this facade I've been living, that I didn't see what really mattered. My daughter needs me, and I need help. I need someone who can help me figure out how to be there for her, how to connect with her before it's too late. Mia's heart ached for him. She had never seen him so vulnerable, so broken. She couldn't deny the connection they had, and the fact that he had trusted her with his secret only made her want to help him more. I'm here for you, David, she said firmly. Whatever you need, I'll be there. I'll help you get through this. David let out a sigh of relief, the tension in his body easing slightly. Thank you, Mia. I don't know what I'd do without you. As they sat together in the quiet hallway, waiting for news about Lily, Mia couldn't help but feel a shift in their relationship. The walls that David had carefully built around himself were starting to crumble, and she was there, ready to help him rebuild, piece by piece. For the first time, Mia realized that she wasn't just caring for a patient. She was becoming part of David's life, and no matter what happened next, she couldn't turn her back on him. The following hours were a blur of hospital staff, medical reports, and prayers. David stayed by his daughter's side, and Mia did what she could to offer support. As the night wore on, she found herself growing closer to David, her role as a caregiver shifting to something much deeper, something more personal. She began to see David in a new light, not just as a man who had been hiding behind his wealth and status, but as a father who was fighting to save his child. It was in those quiet moments, sitting together in the hospital, that Mia began to understand the true weight of David's world. He had built an empire, but now, his greatest challenge wasn't business. It was family, it was love, and it was the fear of losing the one person he cared about most. As the morning sun began to rise, bringing with it the promise of a new day, David received the news he had been waiting for. His daughter, Lily, had made it through the surgery and was stable, but the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. For the first time in days, David allowed himself to breathe, a small but significant smile tugging at his lips. She's going to be okay, he said, his voice filled with relief. Mia smiled back at him, knowing that this was just the beginning of their journey together. She had entered his life as a nurse, but now, she was something more. She was his partner, his confidant, and for better or worse, she was here to stay. Little did Mia know, this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with love, challenges, and the unlikeliest of bonds. The days following Lily's surgery were a mix of relief and uncertainty. David stayed by his daughter's side, rarely leaving her room, while Mia continued her shifts at the hospital. As much as Mia wanted to focus on her work, she found herself thinking about David more and more. His vulnerability had opened a door, and Mia couldn't help but wonder what else lay behind it. He had shared so much with her, and yet she still didn't know the full story. She had always believed in the importance of honesty, especially in relationships, but David's silence about his true identity weighed on her mind. Was it too late for him to open up completely? Or had he already trusted her more than anyone else? It wasn't until a late afternoon shift when Mia's curiosity got the best of her. She had just finished tending to her patients when she walked past David's office, the door slightly ajar. Inside, she could see him pacing, his face tense with worry. Mia hesitated, unsure whether she should interrupt, but something about his demeanor made her feel like she needed to be there. She knocked softly on the doorframe. David looked up, his expression softening when he saw her. "Mia," he said, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "What are you doing here?" Mia stepped inside, her voice gentle but firm. I was about to leave for the night, but you don't look like you're about to get any rest. What's going on? David hesitated, his eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite read. He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. I'm trying to figure out how to fix everything. I've been neglecting so much for so long, and now, it feels like it's all crashing down. I'm not just a CEO, Mia. I'm a father. I should have been there for Lily when she needed me the most. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Mia walked over and placed a hand gently on his arm, offering comfort in the only way she knew how. David, you can't do everything alone. You're doing the best you can right now, and that's what matters. You can't change the past, but you can still make a difference in the present. David met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and guilt. I just wish I had done more. If I had been there for her, maybe things wouldn't have gotten so bad. Mia's heart ached for him, but she understood his pain. She knew what it was like to carry the weight of guilt, to feel like no matter how much you did, it would never be enough. You're not perfect, David, she said softly. But you're trying, and that counts for more than you think. David's shoulders relaxed slightly, and for the first time in days, Mia saw a glimpse of the man he used to be before the weight of responsibility consumed him. Thank you, Mia, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You've been more of a support to me than anyone else. I don't know what I'd do without you. Mia smiled, though she could feel her heart racing in her chest. This wasn't just a patient anymore. This was someone who had become a part of her life in a way she hadn't expected. As the days passed, David and Mia grew closer. They spent long hours together, talking about everything and nothing. David opened up about his struggles, about the pressure of running a billion-dollar company and the loneliness that came with it. Mia, in turn, shared more about her own life, her dreams, and the reasons why she became a nurse. They found solace in each other's company, a quiet understanding that neither had experienced before. It wasn't just the hospital that connected them anymore. It was the bond they had formed through their shared vulnerabilities. One evening, after a long day of work, Mia and David decided to take a walk in the hospital garden. The air was cool, the sky painted with the soft colors of sunset. The quiet surroundings gave them the space to talk without distractions. Do you ever wonder what could have been? David asked, his voice low. Mia turned to face him, curious. What do you mean? Before all this happened, David began, his eyes distant as he looked at the horizon. Before Lily's accident, before the company consumed everything. Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if I had been able to balance it all? Mia thought for a moment before answering. I think everyone has those moments, David. We all wonder what would have happened if we had made different choices. But that doesn't mean we can't still make the most of what we have now. David looked at her, his expression thoughtful. You're right. I can't go back. But I can try to make things right from here on out. For Lily, and for myself. Mia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. That's all anyone can do. You can't change the past, but you can shape the future. As they continued their walk, Mia felt something shift between them. It was subtle, but it was there, an unspoken understanding, a connection that neither of them had anticipated. David wasn't just the CEO of a massive corporation anymore. He was a father, struggling to be the best he could be for his daughter. And Mia wasn't just a nurse. She was someone who had found her place in his life, not as a caregiver, but as someone who truly cared. It was in this moment, under the fading light of the evening, that Mia realized she wasn't just helping David, she was falling for him. And though it scared her to admit it, she knew that this connection, this unexpected bond, was something she couldn't ignore. Days turned into weeks, and Mia found herself more entrenched in David's life than ever before. The bond they shared had deepened, but with that came a complexity she hadn't anticipated. David, despite his cold exterior, had shown her a side of himself that very few people ever got to see. His fears, his regrets, and the overwhelming guilt that he carried were no longer hidden behind the wall of a billionaire CEO. But as they spent more time together, Mia couldn't ignore the nagging, feeling that she was losing a part of herself. She had always been focused on helping others, but now, her growing feelings for David were making it harder to keep that professional distance. She had always believed in boundaries, especially with her patients, but David was no longer just a patient. He was someone who had come to mean something more to her. Yet, Mia knew this wasn't simple. She had already seen what his world could do to someone. She had witnessed the demands of his career, the sacrifices he had made, and the relentless pressure of being the head of one of the wealthiest companies in the country. She didn't know if she was ready to be part of that world, especially knowing that it could never be as simple as she wanted it to be. But despite her reservations, she kept coming back. For David, for Lily, and for herself. One evening, after another long shift, Mia decided to take a step back and focus on herself. She grabbed a coffee at a nearby cafe, sat by the window, and stared out at the bustling city. She hadn't realized how much she had been consumed by her feelings for David. The last thing she needed was to get caught up in a complicated romance, especially when it involved someone like him. She had a life to live, and she couldn't let herself be pulled into the chaos of his world. As she sat there, lost in thought, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down to see a text from David. "Mia, can you meet me? I need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat. She had told herself she wouldn't get involved, but the truth was, she couldn't walk away from him. Not now. Not when he needed her the most. Mia quickly typed back, agreeing to meet him at the hospital. When she arrived, she found David standing outside Lily's room. His face was taut with worry, his hands clenched at his sides. He looked up when he saw her, his eyes filled with an unspoken question. "I need to tell you something," David said, his voice low and strained. "I've been keeping something from you, Mia. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Mia's stomach churned. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she could feel the weight of it in his voice. "What is it, David?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. David hesitated before speaking again. "I don't want you to think I'm just some charity case, someone who needs saving. I'm not a victim, Mia. I'm not just the guy who's been hiding behind this facade of being a businessman. I have money, power, resources, but that's not what matters. It's never mattered to me." Mia looked at him, unsure of where this was going. "What are you saying?" she asked, her heart beginning to race. "What I'm saying is that I need you, Mia. Not because I'm some millionaire, but because I'm a father who's scared. I don't know how to be the man my daughter needs me to be. I've been so focused on everything else, and I've pushed away the people who matter most. But you've been there for me in a way no one else has." His words hit Mia like a punch to the gut. She had no idea how to respond. She had always known that David was struggling, but she hadn't realized the depth of his inner turmoil. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was a man who had lost himself in his own success, and was now desperately trying to find his way back. "David," Mia started, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to say. I never expected any of this. I didn't sign up for this kind of life, but I want to help. I want to help you and Lily. But I can't be what you need if I'm losing myself in the process." David reached out, his hand resting gently on hers. "I don't want to lose you, Mia. I need you in my life. But I also know that I have to find a way to balance it all. I've spent so much time chasing success, I've forgotten what really matters." Mia looked at him, her heart torn. She had already fallen for him, but she didn't know if she could continue down this path. It wasn't just about love, it was about her future, her life. And could she really fit into David's world? The world of a millionaire CEO with all its pressures, demands, and constant expectations? She didn't know. But she also knew that she couldn't walk away without knowing the truth. "I want to be here for you, David," Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to figure this out together. You have to be ready to face what's real, not just what's comfortable." David nodded, his eyes softening. "I'm ready, Mia. I promise you. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, for both of us." As Mia looked into his eyes, she realized that, for the first time, David was truly ready to face the truth. And she was ready to face it with him. Together, they would figure out what came next. The days that followed were filled with a mix of tension and hope. David had made his promise to Mia, a promise that he would be different, that he would be more present, not just as a CEO, but as a father, as a man who understood the importance of the connections that truly mattered. Mia, too, had made her own decision. She had chosen to stay, to stand by him, even though she knew that the path ahead was not going to be easy. She had already begun to see a new side of David, one that wasn't defined by his wealth or his title, but by his vulnerability. She knew that their relationship was changing, and while it was terrifying, it was also thrilling. They were building something real, something they could both be a part of, not just the roles they had played in the past. But despite the progress they were making, Mia couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was still missing, something they hadn't fully addressed. It was one evening, a week after their conversation in the hospital, when David reached out to her again. He had been working tirelessly to reorganize his life, trying to make space for Lily and for Mia, but there was still something he hadn't been able to reconcile. He called Mia, his voice sounding more strained than usual. "Mia, can we meet? I need to talk." Mia agreed, her heart racing. She had grown used to these late-night conversations with David, but this one felt different, more urgent. When she arrived at his office, she found him sitting at his desk, papers scattered around him, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "David," Mia said softly, stepping into the room. "What's going on?" David looked up, his face a mixture of frustration and helplessness. "I've been trying to fix everything, Mia. I've been working nonstop to make sure Lily is okay, that my company is running smoothly, and that you and I have time to figure things out. But no matter how hard I try, it feels like I'm failing in every area of my life." His words hit Mia harder than she expected. She had seen David struggle, but hearing it from him, seeing the weight of it all on his shoulders, made her realize just how much pressure he was under. "David, you're not failing," Mia said gently, walking over to him. "You're doing your best. But you can't do everything alone. You need to take a step back, to focus on what really matters, not just what's expected of you." David let out a deep sigh. "I don't know how to do that, Mia. I've been living in a world where success is everything, where power and money define who you are. And now, it feels like I'm losing touch with who I really am, with what I really want." Mia sat beside him, her hand resting on his. "Maybe it's not about doing everything right. Maybe it's about being honest, with yourself and with the people around you. You don't have to have it all figured out, David. It's okay to not have all the answers." David looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and confusion. "But what about you, Mia? What about us? I've asked so much of you already, and I don't want to pull you into my mess. I'm not sure I even deserve you." Mia's heart ached at his words. She had already fallen for him, and yet she knew he still didn't fully understand what he meant to her. "David," she said softly, "you don't have to deserve me. I'm here because I want to be. I'm here because I care about you, about Lily, about everything that matters to you." For a moment, the two of them just sat in silence, the weight of their emotions hanging in the air. Then David spoke again, his voice softer this time. "I've been pushing people away for so long, Mia. I've been hiding behind this mask, pretending to have everything under control, when the truth is, I don't. I've been scared of failing, of letting people down." Mia reached out, gently cupping his face in her hands. "It's okay to be scared, David. It's okay to fail sometimes. It's part of being human." David closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I don't know how to let go of everything, Mia. I don't know how to stop being the person I've always been." Mia smiled softly. "You don't have to change overnight. Just take it one step at a time, and you'll find your way. We'll find our way." That night, as Mia left David's office, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't felt before. She knew that their relationship was still in its early stages, and there was so much they still had to figure out. But for the first time, she felt hopeful. They were on the right path. David wasn't perfect, and neither was she. But they were both willing to try, to make it work, to build something real. As the days went by, David began to take small steps to change his life. He spent more time with Lily, focusing on being the father she needed. He cut back on his hours at the office, learning to delegate more responsibilities to his team. And, most importantly, he opened up more to Mia, sharing his fears, his hopes, and his dreams. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the weight of his past would creep back into his mind. But with Mia by his side, David began to feel like he was finally living the life he was meant to. And as for Mia, she knew that she had made the right choice. She had chosen to be with David, not because of who he was in the business world, but because of who he was as a person. And that was enough. Together, they were learning to navigate the complicated, beautiful mess of life, one step at a time. The weeks that followed marked a turning point for both David and Mia. David, with Mia's support, began to change the way he approached life. His commitment to his daughter, Lily, grew stronger as he spent more quality time with her. He took her out for walks in the park, shared breakfast together, and even helped her with her schoolwork when she needed it. His focus wasn't just on building a better future for her financially, but on being the kind of father she could turn to, the kind of father he had always wanted to be. Mia watched the transformation with a mixture of pride and admiration. She had seen him at his lowest, hiding behind his wealth and status, but now she was witnessing the real David, someone who was learning how to prioritize what truly mattered. Their relationship, too, had evolved. Mia had learned to open up more, sharing parts of her life that she had kept hidden for so long. She had been so focused on being strong for everyone else that she hadn't given herself the space to express her own fears and dreams. But with David, it felt different. He listened, not just to her words, but to the things she didn't say. He made her feel seen in a way that no one else ever had. One night, after an exhausting day, David called Mia to meet him at the restaurant they had visited during their first real conversation. "I want to talk," he said, his voice soft but serious. "I've been thinking a lot lately, and there's something I need to say." Mia, curious, agreed to meet him. As she sat down across from him at their usual table, she noticed the serious expression on his face. He had something on his mind, something important. "Mia," David began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I want to thank you for everything. For staying by my side, for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. I'm not the same person I was when we first met. I know I still have a long way to go, but I'm ready to take on whatever comes next with you." Mia felt a wave of warmth wash over her as his words sank in. She had been scared too, scared that their connection would be fleeting, that the challenges they faced would tear them apart. But David's words reassured her in a way nothing else could. "David, you don't have to thank me," Mia replied softly. "I'm here because I care about you, because I believe in what we have. I know it hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. We've both been through so much, but we're doing this together." David reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The moment felt surreal, the weight of their shared experiences hanging between them. But there was something else, something that Mia couldn't ignore. "There's something I've been thinking about," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "You've changed, David. I've seen it. But I also know that there's still a part of you that's holding back. You're not ready to let go of the things that used to define you. And I think that's holding you back from fully embracing what we can be together." David's expression faltered for a moment. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," he admitted. "I've built my life on the idea of control, of having everything figured out, of making sure everyone around me is taken care of. But the truth is, Mia, I've been running from myself. I've been running from the idea that I can't control everything." Mia nodded, understanding the struggle he was facing. She had seen it in him, the way he tried to hold on to the parts of his life that no longer served him. But the question was whether he was willing to let go and allow something new to take shape. "David, the truth is, none of us can control everything," Mia said gently. "But what we can control is how we show up for the people who matter. For Lily, for me. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to try." David sat back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. He was quiet for a long time, as if processing everything she had said. Finally, he looked up at her, his expression softening. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been holding on to so much for so long, and I don't know how to let it go. But I want to try. I want to try with you." Mia smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "We'll figure it out together," she said, squeezing his hand. "One step at a time." And so they did. The weeks that followed were a time of growth for both of them. David made a conscious effort to spend more time with Lily, to let go of the idea that his worth was tied to his success. He made space for Mia in his life, not just as someone who supported him, but as someone he could rely on. Mia, in turn, learned to trust him more, to lean on him when she needed to. Their relationship deepened, becoming more than just two people finding solace in each other's company. It became a partnership, one that was rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and love. But even as things began to settle into a new rhythm, they both knew that there were still challenges ahead. David's company, though now running more smoothly, would always be a part of his life. And Mia's own career was a balancing act between being the nurse she had always wanted to be and finding time to nurture her growing relationship with David. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was theirs to figure out. Together, they had both faced their fears and uncertainties, and while there was still much to be done, they were no longer afraid of what the future held. As long as they had each other, they knew they could face anything. As the months passed, David and Mia found themselves more intertwined in each other's lives than ever before. David had continued his efforts to balance his career and his role as a father, and while it was a constant challenge, he was more determined than ever to make it work. He was present in Lily's life, attending her school events, helping with her homework, and even taking her out to the park on weekends. Mia, on the other hand, had found a new sense of purpose in her work and her relationship with David. She had always been driven by helping others, but now, there was an added layer of fulfillment that came from the connection she had with David. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a partner, a confidant, and someone who shared in the joys and struggles of life with him. But as their relationship grew stronger, they both knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. David's company still demanded a lot of his time, and Mia's career wasn't slowing down either. Despite their best efforts, it was becoming increasingly difficult to find time for themselves, to truly focus on their relationship without the pressures of their individual responsibilities getting in the way. One afternoon, as Mia sat in the hospital break room, her phone buzzed with a message from David. "Mia, we need to talk. Can we meet tonight?" The urgency in his message sent a pang of anxiety through her chest. She quickly responded, agreeing to meet him at their usual spot for dinner. When she arrived at the restaurant, she found David already waiting for her, his face tense and his eyes filled with a mix of frustration and exhaustion. "David, what's going on?" Mia asked, her voice soft but concerned. David looked up at her, his expression troubled. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, his tone heavy. "I've been so caught up in trying to fix everything, in trying to be the perfect father, the perfect CEO, the perfect partner. But I'm starting to realize that I'm neglecting something important, us." Mia's heart sank. She had been so caught up in the day-to-day of their lives that she hadn't noticed the shift in David. "What do you mean?" she asked, leaning in slightly. David took a deep breath, his hands resting on the table as he spoke. "I don't know how to do this anymore, Mia. I don't know how to be everything for everyone. I'm failing at work. I'm failing at being the kind of father Lily deserves, and I'm failing at being the kind of partner you need." Mia's heart ached at the pain in his voice. She had seen the toll that his work had taken on him, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real. "David, you're not failing," Mia said gently, reaching across the table to take his hand. "You're doing the best you can. You don't have to be perfect. None of us do." David shook his head, his eyes filled with self-doubt. "But I'm not doing enough. I'm not being the man I promised I would be. I promised you I would change, but I don't know how to fix it. I can't keep going like this." Mia's heart raced as she tried to find the right words. "David, I know it's hard," she said softly. "But you're not alone in this. We're in this together. We can figure it out. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." David looked at her, his eyes searching hers for any sign of hope. "Do you really believe that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia nodded, squeezing his hand. "I do. But you have to let me in, David. You have to let me help. Just like I'm here for you. You don't have to carry this weight alone." There was a long silence as David processed her words. He looked down at the table, deep in thought. When he finally spoke again, his voice was filled with a new resolve. "You're right. I've been pushing you away because I thought I could do it all. But I can't. I need to start letting go, start trusting that I don't have to control everything. I need to be more present, for Lily, for you, and for myself." Mia smiled, her heart swelling with relief. "That's all I want, David. For us to be in this together, no matter how difficult it gets." The rest of the evening passed in a quieter, more peaceful way. They talked, shared their fears and hopes for the future, and made promises to each other. Mia knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like they were facing them as equals, as partners. Over the next few weeks, David began to make small but significant changes. He delegated more of his responsibilities at work, giving his team the space to take on more of the load. He started prioritizing his time with Lily, making sure that he was present for her every day. And most importantly, he made time for Mia. They went on walks, shared quiet dinners, and spent weekends exploring the city together. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Mia, too, began to find more balance in her own life. She learned to lean on David, to let him in when she needed support, and to trust that their relationship wasn't a burden but a shared strength. Slowly but surely, they began to rebuild, not just as individuals, but as a couple. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of David's apartment, watching the sun set over the city, Mia looked at him and smiled. "I'm proud of you, David," she said softly. David turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied. Mia leaned in, her hand resting on his. "We're in this together," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, David truly believed it. Together, they were building a future, one step at a time. The changes in David's life became more evident with each passing day. It wasn't just his work that was shifting, but his entire approach to living. Mia could see it in the way he spoke about his future, about his daughter Lily, and about them as a couple. For the first time, he was thinking beyond the empire he had built and focusing on the relationships that truly mattered. It was a refreshing change, one that Mia had longed to see in him, and she felt an overwhelming sense of pride watching him evolve. They had settled into a routine, balancing their personal and professional lives in a way that worked for both of them. Weekends were no longer consumed by endless meetings and work calls. Instead, they found time to enjoy simple pleasures: breakfast in bed, walks in the park, and quiet evenings spent cooking dinner together. These moments, though small, were becoming the foundation of their relationship. As the weeks went by, Mia's own life began to feel more fulfilled. She had always been dedicated to her patients, but now she was starting to feel like she had more room to breathe, to enjoy the things she had once put on hold. David's encouragement had given her the strength to pursue some of her own dreams she had forgotten in the pursuit of taking care of everyone else. One evening, as they sat in the living room of David's apartment, Mia looked at him with a smile. "You know," she said softly, "I've been thinking about something." David raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "What's that?" he asked, setting aside the book he had been reading. "I've been so focused on helping others my whole life, and I've finally realized that I need to start helping myself, too. I've been so busy putting everyone's needs before my own that I forgot what I truly want." David nodded thoughtfully, understanding where she was coming from. "What do you want, Mia?" he asked, his voice warm and sincere. Mia took a deep breath, her heart racing with excitement and vulnerability. "I want to start focusing more on my career, on finding a balance between work and my personal life. I've always wanted to do more, to grow beyond just being a nurse. I have ideas for programs, for initiatives that could really make a difference." David smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You're more than capable of making that happen, Mia. I know it's been hard for you to think about yourself, but you deserve to have your own dreams, too. I'm behind you every step of the way." Mia felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. For the first time, she felt truly supported, not just in her relationship with him, but in her own aspirations. David's belief in her was something she had never expected, and it gave her the courage to take the next step. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means the world to me." The next few months were filled with a renewed sense of purpose for both of them. David's work was still demanding, but he had found a way to step back without compromising the integrity of his company. He had hired a trusted team to handle day-to-day operations, which allowed him to focus more on the things that truly mattered, like spending time with Lily and growing his relationship with Mia. For Mia, her passion for helping others turned into action. She began working on new initiatives at the hospital, focusing on providing support to underprivileged families, expanding programs that help patients with chronic illnesses, and even starting a support group for nurses who were struggling with burnout. It was a lot of work, but it was fulfilling in a way she hadn't experienced before. David continued to be her rock, offering encouragement and advice whenever she needed it. But even with their careers flourishing, they both knew that life would never be completely without challenges. David's past, his fears of failure, and his ingrained need for control were not things that could be erased overnight. They were a part of who he was, and they would come up again, maybe when they least expected it. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when the first sign of old habits surfaced. David had just returned from a high-stakes meeting with investors, and his mood was off. Mia could tell something was wrong the moment he stepped through the door. He wasn't smiling, his shoulders were tense, and his eyes were clouded with frustration. "David?" Mia asked, concern creeping into her voice. "What happened?" He set his briefcase down with a sigh, running his hand through his hair. "It's the company, Mia. There's a new project, and it's not going well. We're running behind schedule, and I don't know if we're going to meet the deadline. I've been working around the clock to make sure everything falls into place, and it feels like it's all falling apart." Mia stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his arm. David, this is exactly what I've been talking about. You're carrying everything yourself. You can't fix everything all at once. He looked up at her, his eyes tired but searching. I know, Mia, but it's hard. I've always been the one in charge, the one everyone looks to for answers. I don't know how to stop being that person. Mia took a deep breath, trying to steady her own emotions. David, you don't have to be the only one who fixes everything. You have people who care about you. Let them help. Let me help. You don't have to carry this alone. He looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Then, slowly he nodded. You're right. I've been holding on to this for too long. Mia smiled gently, taking his hand. We'll get through it, together. You don't have to do this by yourself. In that moment, David finally allowed himself to lean on her the way he had been needing to. It was a small step, but it was one that marked the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. They had come so far, learning to let go of control and trust each other. There would be more obstacles ahead, but with each challenge, they became stronger. Together, they could face anything. David's life had settled into a new rhythm. His focus had shifted from chasing success and control to finding balance, learning to trust others, and, most importantly, learning to trust himself. He had started to let go of the pressures that came with running a multi-billion-dollar empire, no longer carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. But even though he had made tremendous strides, there were moments when the old habits crept back in. It wasn't always easy. Mia had seen it, and she had learned to recognize when he was beginning to retreat, when the walls started to go up again. It was something they both had to work on, together. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, their plates half finished, and the quiet hum of the city beyond the window, Mia noticed something in David's eyes, something that wasn't there before. You've been quiet tonight, Mia said, setting down her fork. Is something on your mind? David took a deep breath, running his fingers along the rim of his glass. It's just, I've been thinking about Lily's future, he said softly. I've been so focused on making sure she has everything she needs, a good education, a stable life, a future where she doesn't have to worry about anything. But I'm starting to realize that it's not enough. She needs me. She needs us to be present in ways that go beyond just providing for her. Mia's heart swelled as she listened to him. She had always known David had a deep love for his daughter, but hearing him speak so openly about it made her feel even closer to him. You're already doing so much for her, David, Mia said, her voice soft but firm. You're showing up every day. You're there for her when she needs you, and that's what matters. No amount of money can replace the love and care you give her. David nodded, but there was a sense of restlessness in him that Mia couldn't ignore. I just don't want to make the same mistakes I made before, he continued, his eyes distant. I've always been so caught up in my work, in proving myself, that I didn't realize how much I was missing. I want to do better, Mia. For Lily, for me, for us. Mia reached across the table, gently placing her hand on his. David, you're already doing better, she said, her voice reassuring. The fact that you're here, that you're thinking about this, shows just how far you've come. We both have our pasts, things we wish we could change, but the important thing is that we're learning from them and making new choices. Together, David looked at her, his expression softening, and for a moment, Mia saw the man he was becoming, someone who was finally free from the chains of perfectionism and fear. I've been so focused on what I thought I had to be, David said, his voice filled with vulnerability. But I'm starting to see that who I am is enough. And I want to build a life with you, Mia. Hey, life that isn't just about success and work, but about love and connection. I don't want to lose sight of that again. Mia's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had always known that David was a man of deep emotion, but hearing him speak so openly about his fears and his desire for a different kind of future made her believe even more in the possibility of them. We'll build that life, David, she said softly. Together, over the next few months, they continued to make progress. David took more time off from work, attending school plays, helping Lily with her homework, and even taking her on weekend getaways. He had learned how to balance the responsibilities of being a CEO with the responsibilities of being a father and a partner. Mia, too, was thriving. She had started her own program to help nurses struggling with burnout, and her passion for her work had reignited in ways she hadn't expected. She was no longer just the caregiver. She was taking care of herself, pursuing her dreams, and building a future that was both hers and theirs. But as they grew closer, there were moments of doubt, moments when the old insecurities crept in. One evening, as they walked through the park, David stopped, looking at Mia with a troubled expression. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, "and about the future. I know we've come a long way, but I'm still scared. I'm scared of falling back into old habits, of not being enough for you, of letting you down." Mia looked at him, her heart aching for him. She had seen how hard he had worked to make changes in his life, but the fear of not being enough was something he had carried with him for years. "David," Mia said softly, taking his hand in hers, "you are enough. You've always been enough. I'm here because I believe in you, and I believe in us. I know we're not perfect, but we're building something real, and that's all that matters." David smiled, a small, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I'm glad you believe in us," he said quietly. "Because I do too. I'm ready to keep moving forward, one step at a time." As the days passed, David and Mia continued to learn from one another. They faced challenges, both personal and professional. But with each step, they became stronger. Together, they were building a life that was rooted in love, trust, and the understanding that they didn't have to be perfect to make it work. It wasn't always easy, but it was real, and that was enough. With each passing day, David and Mia learned that the future was not something to be feared, but something to embrace, together. As David and Mia settled further into their shared life, the tension that had once defined their relationship began to dissipate. They were no longer two individuals trying to navigate their complicated worlds separately. Instead, they were partners, facing everything that came their way together. The challenges they had encountered had only made them stronger, their bond more unshakable. But even with all the progress they had made, there was one final hurdle David had to overcome: his own past. His history of avoiding vulnerability, his need for control, and his fear of failure had not disappeared completely. He had made great strides, but deep down, there was still a part of him that felt unworthy of the happiness he had found with Mia. It was a quiet Sunday morning when David realized this. He was sitting in the living room, a cup of coffee in his hands, looking out the window at the calm of the city below. Mia was still asleep, the quiet house giving him the space to think. As he sat there, he thought about how far he had come, how much had changed since he had first met Mia. He had been a man consumed by work, by success, and by the constant need to prove himself. But now he was something else. He was a father, a partner, a man who had learned to let go of some of his fears, who had learned to trust. But there was still a part of him that couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't deserve this life. He didn't deserve Mia's love, her unwavering belief in him. It had been so easy for him to give everything to his work, to bury himself in success. But with Mia, it wasn't about success. It was about love, and that was a terrifying thing for him. As the morning passed, David's mind continued to race. He needed to confront these feelings, these fears. He couldn't keep running from them. Not if he wanted to build a future with Mia. And so, when Mia finally woke up, he knew it was time to talk. She walked into the living room, her eyes still heavy with sleep, a soft smile on her lips. "Good morning," she said, walking over to him and planting a kiss on his cheek. David smiled, but there was a weight in his chest. "Mia, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice serious. Mia immediately sensed the shift in his tone, her smile fading as she sat down next to him. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. David took a deep breath, setting his coffee cup down. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how far we've come, about how much I've changed. And I realized something. Even though I've made progress, there's still a part of me that feels unworthy. Unworthy of the life we've built, unworthy of your love, of all the good things that have come from us being together." Mia's heart ached for him as she listened, but she didn't interrupt. She could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the pain in his voice. "David, you're not unworthy," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You've been through a lot, but you've worked so hard to become the man you are now. You've shown up, not just for me, but for Lily, for yourself. You are more than worthy of all the love and happiness you've found." David shook his head, looking down at his hands. "I don't know how to believe that," he said quietly. "I've spent so many years thinking that success and control were the only things that mattered. But now, with you, it feels like I'm constantly afraid of losing it all." and I don't know how to stop feeling like that. Mia took his hand, squeezing it gently. David, no one is perfect. We all have our insecurities. But what makes you worthy isn't your success. It's who you are. The father, the partner, the person who's willing to change, to grow, to be better. You've already done the hardest part. You've opened your heart. You've allowed yourself to love and to be loved. That's what matters. And that's more than enough. David looked up at her, his eyes softening. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace, of acceptance. The walls that had once held him back from truly embracing the love and happiness he had with Mia were beginning to crumble. He realized that he didn't need to be perfect. He didn't need to control everything. All he needed was to be present, to be the man Mia believed in, to be the father Lily needed. And that was enough. The weight that had been pressing down on him for so long lifted, if only for a moment. He took a deep breath, feeling lighter than he had in years. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. Mia smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. You don't have to thank me, David. I believe in you because I see the real you. And that's more than enough. As the days turned into weeks, David and Mia continued to build their life together. They faced challenges, of course. But the difference was that they now faced them as a team, no longer weighed down by past fears or insecurities. David had let go of the need for perfection, and Mia had learned to let herself be vulnerable, to lean on him when she needed to. And together, they were building a future filled with love, understanding, and the kind of trust that could withstand anything. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of David's apartment, watching the stars begin to emerge in the night sky, Mia looked at him and smiled. You know, she said softly, I'm proud of you. David looked at her, a soft smile spreading across his face. I'm proud of us, he replied. We've come a long way. Mia nodded, leaning into him. We've still got a long way to go, she said, her voice filled with hope. David kissed the top of her head, wrapping his arm around her. And we'll do it together, he whispered. In that moment, they both knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it side by side, stronger than ever before. The changes in David and Mia's lives seemed almost like a dream, a far cry from where they had started. The struggles they had faced individually and together were slowly becoming the stepping stones to something beautiful. David's company continued to thrive under his leadership, but he had finally found the balance he had been seeking. His relationship with Lily had grown stronger, and he had become the father he always wanted to be, someone who was there, truly present. Mia, too, had found a new sense of fulfillment in her work. She had built a support system for nurses battling burnout, and her efforts were making a difference in ways she had never imagined. But it wasn't just her professional success that brought her joy. It was the partnership she shared with David. Every day, their connection deepened. The trust they had in each other allowed them to navigate life's challenges more gracefully. Still, even with all the progress they had made, they both knew there was always more to learn, more to give. It was a Saturday afternoon when everything shifted. David had planned a surprise getaway for the two of them, a weekend at a quiet cabin in the mountains, far away from the noise of the city. The moment Mia found out about the trip, excitement bubbled up inside her. It was the perfect escape, a chance to focus on each other and leave behind the pressures of their daily lives. As they drove up into the mountains, Mia couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over her. The beauty of nature, the fresh air, and the sound of birds chirping filled her with a quiet joy. David, sitting beside her, was as relaxed as she had ever seen him. He had become someone she admired more and more every day, not just for his accomplishments, but for the man he had become. When they arrived at the cabin, nestled in the heart of the woods, Mia was in awe of how perfect it was. The rustic charm, the cozy fireplace, the incredible view, everything about it felt like it had been designed for them. They spent the evening by the fire, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. It was a moment of pure bliss, one that felt like it could last forever. The following day, they hiked through the trails together, hand in hand, breathing in the crisp mountain air. It was simple, but it was perfect. At the end of the hike, they reached a lookout point, where the world below seemed to stretch endlessly. They stood together in silence, taking in the breathtaking view. This is incredible, Mia said softly, her eyes scanning the horizon. David smiled, his gaze fixed on her. It is. And I think it's a reminder of how far we've come. Mia turned to face him, her heart full. I never thought I'd be here, she said quietly. With you. With everything we've built together. David reached out, gently taking her hands in his. I never thought I'd be here either, he replied, his voice soft. But I'm so glad we are. Together. As the days went by, their bond grew even deeper. They talked about their hopes for the future, about the life they wanted to build, not just for themselves, but for Lily as well. They discussed everything, from their careers to their dreams of eventually having a family of their own. Mia had always wanted children, but she had never imagined that it could be something she and David could have together. But the idea felt more and more possible as they continued to build their life side by side. By the end of the weekend, as they sat together on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun set over the mountains, Mia felt a sense of calm that she hadn't known in a long time. They were building something real, something lasting, and the future seemed filled with endless possibilities. David, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, do you ever think about the future? About what's next for us? David smiled, his eyes warm as he looked at her. I think about it every day, he said. And I know whatever comes next, we'll face it together. We've been through so much already, and we've come out stronger on the other side. I don't think there's anything we can't handle. Mia smiled, leaning into him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her. I feel the same way, she said, her voice filled with contentment. As long as we're together, I know everything will be okay. The weeks that followed were filled with growth. David had continued to find a healthy balance between his work and his family life, and Mia was thriving in her career as well. Their relationship was stronger than ever, and the love they shared was unwavering. But as life continued to move forward, they both knew that there would always be new challenges, new obstacles to overcome. It was in those moments of doubt, of uncertainty, that they leaned on each other the most. And in those moments, they found strength, not just in themselves, but in the bond they had built. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, David turned to Mia, his expression thoughtful. Mia, he began, his voice serious, I want you to know how much I love you. I don't know if I've said it enough, but I want you to know that you mean everything to me. Mia's heart fluttered at his words. She had never doubted his love, but hearing him say it so openly made her feel like the luckiest woman in the world. I love you too, David, she said, her voice filled with emotion. More than I ever thought I could. And as they held each other that night, the future didn't seem so scary anymore. Together, they knew they could face anything. The past was behind them, and the future, filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities, was waiting to be written. Together, life continued to evolve for David and Mia in ways they hadn't expected. The cabin weekend had solidified their bond even more, and their connection felt deeper than ever. Yet, with the peace they had found came the recognition that life had a way of testing even the strongest of relationships. The honeymoon phase had started to fade into a steady rhythm of everyday life. David had been balancing his role as a CEO with his responsibilities as a father, and Mia had been thriving in her work, but both of them knew that this balance, though hard one, was fragile. The next few months brought new challenges. David's company was in the midst of a major project, and the pressure to meet deadlines and deliver exceptional results was high. He could feel the stress mounting again, even though he had promised himself he would never fall into the same old patterns. Mia, too, was feeling the weight of her commitments. She had become the driving force behind the new programs at the hospital, helping nurses battle burnout, but it was beginning to take a toll. She wasn't just a caregiver at work. She was also giving her energy to David, to Lily, and to their relationship. While she was happy with how everything was going, she knew she needed to find a way to give herself more room to breathe. One evening, after a particularly long day for both of them, they found themselves in their living room, the hum of the city outside their window the only noise filling the silence. David was sitting on the couch, his tie loosened, looking tired, but he still managed to smile when Mia walked in. Hey, you look like you've been running a marathon, Mia teased, trying to lighten the mood. David chuckled softly, but the exhaustion in his eyes didn't go unnoticed. Feels like it. There's just so much going on at work, and I feel like I'm drowning in it all. I promised myself I wouldn't let this happen again, but here I am. Mia sat down beside him, taking his hand in hers. You don't have to do it all, David. You don't have to carry the weight of everything on your own. David's expression softened, his eyes meeting hers. I know, but it's hard to let go sometimes. I feel like if I don't keep pushing, things will fall apart. Mia squeezed his hand gently. You're allowed to take a step back, David. You've made so much progress, and you've built a team you can trust. It's okay to lean on them. David looked at her, a mixture of appreciation and doubt in his eyes. I just don't want to let anyone down. I've worked my whole life to build this, and I don't know how to stop fighting. Mia smiled softly, her thumb brushing over his hand. I'm not asking you to stop fighting. But sometimes, fighting doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means knowing when to ask for help, knowing when it's okay to rest, and trusting that the people who care about you will be there for you. David leaned back, taking a deep breath. The weight of her words settled over him, slowly chipping away at the burden he had been carrying. You're right, he said, his voice quieter now. I think I've been so afraid of losing control that I forgot what really matters. I'm afraid that if I stop, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, I've already started to let go, and it's been okay. I've just been too scared to admit it. Mia turned to face him more fully. What are you afraid of, David? She asked softly. Losing everything? Or realizing you don't have to do it all alone? He looked at her, his eyes searching. I think I'm afraid of losing myself, he admitted. The person I've been for so long. The workaholic, the control freak, the one who had everything figured out. I don't know who I am without all that. Mia leaned closer, placing a hand on his cheek. You're not just what you do, David. You're a father, a partner, a man who's learning to open up and trust. You're already so much more than you think you are. And that's what I love about you. David closed his eyes for a moment, allowing her words to sink in. I don't know what I'd do without you, Mia, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I feel like you've helped me find parts of myself I never knew existed. Mia smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. I'm here, David, and I always will be. But you have to believe in yourself too. You're not defined by your work or your success. You're defined by the choices you make, and right now, you're choosing to be here, with me, with Lily, and with yourself. That's all that matters. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of the conversation settling between them. But it wasn't a heavy weight. It was a light one that brought clarity and peace. David didn't need to have it all figured out. He didn't need to control everything. What mattered was that he was learning to trust, to lean on Mia, to share the burden. And in doing so, he was finding a strength he had never known before. As the days passed, David took a step back at work, delegating more responsibilities to his team. He spent more time with Lily, being present in ways he had never been before. He also made time for Mia, the woman who had shown him that life wasn't about perfection, but about love, trust, and growth. And Mia, too, found the balance she had been looking for. She set aside time for herself, for her own dreams and passions, and leaned on David when she needed him. Together, they were building a life where they didn't have to be perfect, they just had to be there for each other. It wasn't always easy, but it was real, and that was all they needed. The months that followed were filled with a calm that David and Mia had not experienced before. After all the chaos of their respective careers, the fear of failure, and the emotional toll of trying to be everything for everyone, they had finally found peace. But it wasn't just a fleeting peace. It was a deep, lasting contentment that came from understanding each other and learning to rely on one another. David had let go of the tight grip he once held on control, finding comfort in sharing his burdens with Mia. He was present with Lily in ways that went beyond just being a father in name, and he had learned to trust his team at work, allowing them to handle more of the company's demands. Mia, too, had found a new sense of self. She had always been the one to care for others, but now she was taking time for herself. She was thriving in her work, and her connection with David had given her the strength to pursue her own dreams. Together, they were growing, learning how to balance their personal and professional lives, and finding joy in the small moments. One evening, after a particularly busy week, Mia and David decided to take a trip to the coast. It had been a while since they had done something spontaneous, just for the two of them. They packed up a small bag, rented a cozy beachside cabin, and set off on a weekend getaway. The drive was filled with light conversation and laughter, the kind that came from a place of comfort and familiarity. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore greeted them as they arrived at their destination, and they both felt an immediate sense of relief. The air was salty, the sun was beginning to set, and everything seemed to fall into place. They spent the evening walking along the beach, their feet sinking into the soft sand as they talked about everything and nothing. Mia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She looked at David, who had become more relaxed in the past few months. His smile was genuine, his eyes soft, and for the first time in a long while, he looked at ease. "This is exactly what we needed," Mia said, her voice filled with contentment. David nodded, his gaze following the waves. "I couldn't agree more. It's so easy to forget to slow down, to just enjoy being in the moment." Mia smiled, slipping her hand into his. "We've both been so busy trying to be everything for everyone. I think it's time we start doing things for ourselves." David looked down at their joined hands, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking a lot about that. I used to think that work, success, and control were everything. But now, I see that what matters most is the life we're building together, the moments we share, the love we give each other, and the memories we create." Mia's heart swelled as she listened to him. It was a side of David she hadn't always seen, the side that valued what truly mattered. And in that moment, she realized how much he had changed, not just for her, but for himself. "I love you, David," Mia said softly, her voice full of emotion. "And I'm so proud of everything you've become." David turned to her, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I love you too, Mia. More than I ever thought I could love someone. You've taught me what really matters, and I will never take that for granted." The rest of their weekend was filled with quiet moments of reflection, laughter, and intimacy. They explored the coastline, spent hours talking on the porch, and enjoyed the kind of peace that only came when two people truly understood each other. It was a perfect escape, a time for both of them to reconnect with who they were and what they wanted from the future. By the time they headed back to the city, they both felt a renewed sense of purpose. Their relationship had grown stronger, their individual lives had become more balanced, and they had learned the art of slowing down, of prioritizing what truly mattered. The trip had been a reminder of how much they had to be thankful for, and how important it was to keep nurturing the love they had built. A few weeks later, as the seasons changed and the city began to buzz with the energy of the approaching holiday season, David and Mia found themselves planning for the next chapter of their lives. They began discussing their future, together in a more concrete way, talking about the possibility of buying a home, of starting a family, and of what their lives would look like in the years to come. It was a conversation that felt natural, a reflection of everything they had been through and everything they had learned along the way. One evening, after a quiet dinner at home, David turned to Mia with a smile that made her heart flutter. "I've been thinking about what you said, about doing things for ourselves. And I think it's time we take that step. I want to build a future with you, a future that's just ours. I want to make all the big decisions together." Mia looked at him, her heart full. "I want that too, David. More than anything." And with that, they both knew that the journey they had started, the journey of trust, love, and growth, was just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, of course, but with the foundation they had built, they were ready for whatever came next. Together, as the months passed, David and Mia found themselves living a life they had once only dreamed of, but the road to get there wasn't always as smooth as it appeared. The balance they had carefully crafted in their personal and professional lives was fragile. They had learned to communicate, to lean on each other, and to trust, but new challenges always seemed to emerge, pushing them to grow in ways they hadn't anticipated. The holidays were approaching, and with them came the familiar pressure of family gatherings, work events, and the expectations that often accompanied the season. David had always been the type of person to bury himself in work during stressful times, but this year, something was different. He had promised himself, and Mia, that he wouldn't let work consume him again. But as the holiday season loomed, the demands on his time began to weigh on him. Mia noticed it first. David was quieter, more distant, and she could see the stress creeping back into his eyes. It wasn't long before he came home one evening after another long day at the office, his shoulders hunched and his brow furrowed. "David," Mia said softly, concern lacing her voice as she put down the book she was reading, "what's going on? You've been coming home late every night this week." David ran a hand through his hair, his face tired. It's just everything. There's so much to do. The company is going through a huge restructuring, and I need to make sure it all goes smoothly. I can't afford to drop the ball now. Mia stood up and walked over to him, her hand resting on his arm. I understand the pressure you're under, but we agreed, remember? You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry the weight of everything. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up into her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, he let himself breathe. I know. I just feel like if I don't keep pushing, everything will fall apart. Mia's heart ached for him. She had seen this before, the old habits creeping back in. The fear of failure, of not being enough. It wasn't about the work itself. It was about his fear of losing control. David, you're not going to lose everything. You've already built something amazing. But you don't have to do it all by yourself. David let out a long sigh and sank into the couch, his exhaustion palpable. Mia sat beside him, her hand still on his. What's really going on? She asked gently. David hesitated before answering. I'm scared, Mia. Scared that if I take a step back, I'll lose everything. I'm scared of disappointing you, Lily, and everyone at work. I've worked so hard for this, and I don't know what happens if I stop. Mia turned toward him, her heart full of empathy. David, you've already proven that you don't need to do everything yourself. You've learned to trust your team, and you've learned to trust me. I'm not asking you to give up everything you've worked for, but I'm asking you to trust that you don't have to carry the burden alone. You don't have to carry it all, not anymore. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words sink in. When he opened them again, there was a softness there, a hint of relief. I don't know how to stop being afraid of it all falling apart. Mia's voice was steady, filled with the quiet strength she had gained from their time together. David, you've already taken the hardest step. You're letting yourself be vulnerable. You're letting me in. The only thing left now is to believe that you deserve peace. You deserve to let go of the fear that's been holding you back. David took a deep breath and nodded slowly. You're right. I need to stop letting my fear control me. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling between them. Mia squeezed his hand, offering him the comfort he needed. It's going to take time, she said softly. But I'll be here, every step of the way. You don't have to do it alone. That night, David fell asleep feeling a little lighter. He hadn't realized how much he had been carrying until Mia had reminded him that it wasn't all his responsibility. The next morning, after a peaceful night's sleep, David woke up with a renewed sense of clarity. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges at work, more balancing to do, and more moments when his old fears would resurface. But he also knew that he didn't have to face it alone. As he sat down for breakfast with Mia, he took her hand and smiled. Thank you for always being there for me, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Mia smiled back, her eyes soft with affection. I'm always here, David. And I believe in you. You don't have to carry this weight anymore. Over the following weeks, David began to take more steps toward finding balance. He took more time off from work, made sure to be present for Lily's activities, and most importantly, allowed himself to enjoy moments of peace with Mia. They spent evenings together, cooking dinner, taking walks, and just being with each other. The holiday season, which had once felt like an overwhelming mountain of expectations, now felt like an opportunity to enjoy the simple joys of life, to be together, to build memories, and to rest. As the year came to a close, David and Mia stood at the window of their apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below. We've come so far, haven't we? Mia said, her voice soft and content. David wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. We have, and I wouldn't change a thing. Mia smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. Me neither. They both knew that the future wasn't certain. There would always be challenges, always be moments of doubt. But with each other, they had everything they needed. Together, they had created a life that was real, that was built on love, trust, and the willingness to grow, not just as individuals, but as partners, ready to face whatever came next. And with that, they knew that whatever happened in the coming year, they would be ready for it. Together, as the new year unfolded, David and Mia's lives began to settle into a rhythm that felt more natural and sustainable than ever before. They had found a balance that seemed to work for them, one that allowed them to enjoy their successes, their love for each other, and the quiet moments that life had to offer. But just as they began to feel like they were on solid ground, life threw them a curveball. David's company, while still thriving, faced a sudden, unexpected crisis. A major deal that had been in the works for months fell through at the last minute, leaving David and his team scrambling to manage the fallout. The stress that David had worked so hard to avoid began to creep back into his life. It wasn't the same as before. He wasn't losing himself in his work, but the weight of the situation still loomed large. He had promised Mia that he would handle things differently, that he would take care of his health, his relationships, and his well-being. But now, with this new challenge, the old habits seemed to resurface. Mia could see it in him immediately. The long hours at the office, the late-night calls, the tension in his shoulders. It was as though he was reliving the past, trying to do it all on his own, trying to control the uncontrollable. One evening, as David was preparing for yet another late night at the office, Mia stopped him at the door. "David," she said gently, "what's going on? You've been coming home later and later. You're carrying all of this by yourself again." David paused, his hand resting on the doorknob, but he didn't turn around. "It's just a setback. We'll fix it. I just need to work through this, Mia." Mia walked over to him, placing her hand on his arm. "You don't have to fix everything by yourself," she said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "I'm here. We're in this together, remember?" David's shoulders slumped slightly as he turned to face her. "I know. I just feel like if I don't take control, everything will fall apart again. I've worked too hard for this. I can't let it all slip away." Mia reached up and cupped his face in her hands, looking him in the eyes. "David, you've already done the hard work. You've built something incredible, but you don't have to bear the burden alone anymore. I'm here. I always have been, and I always will be." For a moment, David simply stood there, his gaze locked with hers. The weight of everything he had been carrying seemed to shift, just slightly, as he let out a long breath. "I don't know how to stop, Mia," he admitted quietly. "How do I let go when everything I've done is tied to this? My whole identity has been wrapped up in my work." Mia smiled softly, her hand still on his face. "You don't need to let go of who you are, David. But you do need to remember that you're more than just your work. You're a father, a partner, a person with dreams and needs of your own. You're not defined by your career. You're defined by the choices you make, and right now, you're choosing to be here with me. That's all that matters." David looked down at her hands on his face, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't want to disappoint you," he said softly. "I don't want to go back to the way things were." Mia shook her head gently. "You're not disappointing me, David. You're learning, just like I am. We're growing together. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. You've already made so much progress. You're already enough." Tears welled up in David's eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. I'm scared, Mia. Scared of failing again." Mia wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a tight embrace. "It's okay to be scared," she whispered, "but you're not alone. We're in this together, and no matter what happens, we'll figure it out." As they stood there, holding each other, David realized that he didn't need to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders anymore. Mia was right. He had built something incredible, but that didn't mean he had to sacrifice his well-being in the process. It was a lesson he had to learn all over again, but with Mia by his side, he knew he could do it. Over the next few days, David made a conscious effort to step back from the work that had been consuming him. He delegated more to his team, trusted that they could handle the challenges, and took time to focus on his family. He spent more time with Lily, enjoying the simple moments, and made sure to connect with Mia, not just as a partner, but as a friend, as someone he could rely on. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments of doubt, but slowly, the stress that had plagued him began to lift. Mia, too, made sure to take time for herself, reminding David that they both had to take care of their own needs in order to give their best to each other. Together, they found the balance they had been searching for. The rest of the year brought more challenges, but they faced them with the same determination and trust that had gotten them this far. They knew that life would continue to throw obstacles their way, but they were no longer afraid of them. With each other, they had everything they needed to keep moving forward. And so, as the seasons changed and the year drew to a close, David and Mia stood together, ready for whatever the future held. They had learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about trust, growth, and the willingness to face life's challenges together. And with that understanding, they knew they could face anything, side by side. As the months passed, David and Mia found that their lives were continuing to move forward in ways they had never imagined. The challenges they had faced together, the deep conversations about their pasts and future, and the growing trust between them had only strengthened their bond. Their connection had become something that neither of them had expected, something more than just love. It was a partnership, a deep-rooted understanding that no matter what happened, they would face it together. But as with any relationship, life threw them another test. The pressure of David's work had started to creep back into his life, despite his earlier promises to focus on what truly mattered. A new project had been assigned to him, one that carried immense weight for the company. The stress was palpable, and although he had learned to delegate more, the old instinct to take everything on himself was hard to ignore. Mia noticed the changes in him before he did. She could tell he was retreating again, his eyes becoming distant as the stress of work began to take its toll. He was still present for Lily, still showing up as the father she needed, but he was withdrawing from her, from their shared moments. One evening, after dinner, Mia sat down with him, sensing that something was off. "David," she said softly, looking at him with concern, "you've been distant lately. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but we agreed you wouldn't carry everything alone. What's going on?" David hesitated, his fingers drumming on the table. He knew she could sense it, that he couldn't hide it from her. "It's just work," he said, his voice low. "There's this huge project, and I feel like everything is riding on it. I need to be on top of it. I can't afford to fail." Mia sat across from him, watching the familiar tension take over his face. "David, you don't have to do this," she said gently, her tone filled with empathy. "I know you want to prove yourself, but you don't have to carry all the weight. You've already proven yourself time and again, and you've built a team that trusts you. Let them help." He rubbed his face, frustration written all over him. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted, his voice thick. "I've always been the one to take control. What happens if I let go? What if things go wrong?" Mia reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "You're not alone, David. We're in this together. You don't have to be perfect. You've built something incredible already, and it's okay to let go of some of that pressure." David's eyes softened, but doubt still lingered in his gaze. I can't stop worrying. What if I fail? What if everything falls apart?" Mia smiled softly, squeezing his hand. "The only way you can fail is if you stop trusting yourself, if you stop trusting us. You've come so far already, David. You've already taken so many steps toward being the person you want to be. You don't need to carry this burden alone anymore. Let me help you carry it." For a long moment, David sat quietly, the weight of her words sinking in. He had been so afraid of letting go, of losing control, that he hadn't realized how much he had been holding on to. He looked at Mia, her steady, unwavering gaze a source of calm amidst his storm. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been holding on to this fear for so long that I forgot what it feels like to trust. I've been pushing you away, pushing everything away, because I didn't want to risk losing it all." Mia gently pulled him into an embrace, her arms around him offering warmth and comfort. "You're not alone, David. I'm here, and I believe in you, in us." He held her tightly, finally allowing himself to relax, to breathe. It was the first time in weeks that he had truly let go of the fear that had been gnawing at him. Over the next few days, David made a conscious effort to change the way he approached his work. He started delegating more, leaning on his team, trusting them to handle things when he couldn't. He spent more time with Mia and Lily, focusing on the things that truly mattered: his family, his health, and his own well-being. Mia, too, made sure that she wasn't losing herself in her work or their relationship. She had her own passions, her own projects, and she knew that in order to be the best partner she could be for David, she needed to take care of herself as well. They began to find new ways to support each other, to make time for both the big and small moments. One Saturday afternoon, as they sat on the porch of their apartment, watching the sun dip below the horizon, David turned to Mia, a quiet smile on his face. "I've been thinking about everything we've been through, and I realize that I've been so focused on what I thought I had to be, the perfect man, the perfect father, the perfect businessman. But I'm learning that the only thing I need to be is real. And with you, I feel like I can finally do that." Mia smiled, her heart swelling with love. "You don't have to be perfect, David. You just need to be you. That's who I love. That's who I believe in." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the weight of the world seeming to fall away as they shared the simple joy of each other's company. The road ahead was still uncertain, and life would continue to present new challenges, but for the first time in a long time, David felt ready to face them, knowing that he didn't have to do it alone. He had Mia. He had Lily. And together, they would face whatever came next, side by side, stronger than ever. The future, once so intimidating, now felt full of possibilities, endless, beautiful, and waiting for them to embrace it, together. As David and Mia entered the spring of their second year together, they found that their relationship had reached a point of stability that felt both comforting and new. The past had taught them so much about each other, and with each lesson came a deeper connection. They had learned to trust one another, to lean into the challenges they faced as a team, and most importantly, they had learned to give each other space to grow as individuals. David had truly embraced the idea of balance, spending more time with Mia and Lily, and allowing himself to step away from the pressures of his job when he needed to. The intense grip of his old habits had loosened, though not without effort. There were still days when the weight of responsibility would settle over him, making him wonder if he was doing enough, but those moments were fewer now. Mia, on the other hand, had continued to pour herself into her work, growing her nursing program and offering guidance to the staff who needed it. But she, too, had found a way to step back when needed, carving out time for the life she shared with David. They were no longer two people merely trying to balance their work and personal lives. They were now creating a life together that was rich in love, understanding, and mutual respect. It was during one of these quieter weeks, when the pressures of work had subsided and they had finally found a moment to breathe, that a conversation began to shift the trajectory of their lives once again. It started like any other casual conversation, on the porch, as the sun set and the sound of birds filled the air. David, sitting back in his chair, looked over at Mia, who was tracing patterns on the surface of the wooden table. "You know," he began, his voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking a lot about the future lately. I've been reflecting on everything we've been through, and I realized something." Mia paused, her fingers stilling on the table as she turned to face him. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft but full of curiosity. David took a deep breath, meeting her gaze. "I think I'm ready for more. Not just in terms of my work, but in terms of us. I feel like we've built something so beautiful together, and I don't want to wait anymore. I want to start planning for the next chapter." Mia's heart fluttered in her chest, a sense of excitement blooming within her. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she could already feel where the conversation was headed. David smiled, the warmth of his eyes reaching out to her. "I'm talking about building a family, Mia. Not just as a couple, but with Lily and maybe more of us. I've been so focused on my career, but now I want to focus on what truly matters. I want to make sure that our future is full of love and that we can give Lily everything she needs. I want to give her a sibling, if that's what we both want." Mia felt her pulse quicken. This wasn't a conversation she had been expecting, but it was one she had long hoped for. She had always dreamed of having a family of her own with David, of seeing their lives unfold together in a way that was more than just about success and work. "David, I've thought about that too," Mia said, her voice thick with emotion. "I want that too. I want to have children with you, to build a family together. But I also want to make sure that we're both ready, that we can handle the challenges that come with it." David nodded, his expression serious but hopeful. "I know it won't be easy, but I believe in us. We've faced so much already, and we've come through it stronger. I think we're ready for this next step, Mia. I want to create a life with you, a life that's not just about our careers or our past, but about what we can give each other and the family we can build." Mia looked at him, feeling a deep sense of joy. She had always loved the idea of a family, of raising children with someone who shared her values and dreams. But hearing David express the same desires, with such clarity and conviction, filled her with more happiness than she could put into words. "I'm ready, David," Mia said softly, her voice filled with certainty. "I'm ready to take that next step with you. I want to build that future together." They sat there for a while longer, talking about what it would mean to have a family, the challenges and joys that lay ahead, and how they could continue to support each other as they made this big decision. They didn't have all the answers, but they knew that they had something stronger than any plan. They had each other, and that was all that mattered. In the weeks that followed, David and Mia began to take concrete steps toward building the future they had dreamed about. They started looking at houses together, considering where they would want to raise a family, and began talking about the practicalities of having another child. It wasn't just about making a baby. It was about creating a home, a space full of love and security where they could all grow together. They talked about the values they wanted to instill in their children, the lessons they had learned from their own experiences, and how they would make sure their family knew the importance of love, support, and balance. As the summer months approached, their bond grew even stronger. They weren't rushing into anything, but they were taking their time, savoring the process of building a life that was more than they had ever imagined. They had found something precious, not just a relationship, but a shared vision for the future, one that would continue to grow and evolve with time. And as they moved forward, hand in hand, they knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together, ready for the next chapter in their journey. Their love, their trust, and their commitment to one another had already taken them so far. And now, with the future waiting just ahead, they were more prepared than ever to take the next step, side by side. As David and Mia settled deeper into their life together, the idea of building a family continued to grow within them both. They had already taken so many steps forward, professionally, emotionally, and as a couple. The foundation they had built was strong, and now, they were ready to take on the new challenge of expanding their family. But with the excitement came a level of uncertainty, as with any major life decision. They had both worked hard to create the balance they enjoyed, and the thought of adding to their family was both thrilling and daunting. They spent countless nights discussing what their future would look like, what kind of parents they would be, how they would manage their careers while raising children, and what kind of home they wanted to provide. It was an exciting time, filled with possibilities, but it was also one that required deep reflection and careful consideration. One evening, as they sat in the warmth of their living room, sipping wine and chatting about their plans, Mia looked at David with a sense of clarity in her eyes. "David," she began, her voice gentle but full of conviction, "we've talked a lot about having another child, and I know we're both excited. But I want to make sure we're on the same page with everything. This is a huge step, and I don't want us to feel overwhelmed or unprepared." David looked at her with a soft smile, his hand resting on hers. "I feel the same way," he said, his voice sincere. "I've never been this certain about something in my life. But I also know that this is a big change. We have to be ready, not just for the joy, but for the challenges that come with it. And that means we have to support each other, just like we always have." Mia nodded, grateful for his understanding. "Exactly. It's not just about what we want. It's about how we're going to make it work. I know we can do it, but it will take all of us working together. Our time, our energy, and our commitment to each other and to the life we're building." David squeezed her hand. "I'm ready. I've never been more ready for anything. I've learned so much about myself, about us, and what we want. And I know that whatever comes next, we'll handle it together." The conversation shifted as they discussed practical matters, where they would live, how they would balance their time, and how they could keep the intimacy and connection they had so carefully nurtured. They both agreed that they wanted to build a strong family foundation, one that allowed for both flexibility and stability. They talked about how to prepare for the physical, emotional, and logistical changes that a new baby would bring, but they also spoke about how they would make sure to never lose sight of their own needs and the connection they had worked so hard to build. As the weeks went by, David and Mia's discussions continued to evolve. They began making plans, looking at homes that could accommodate their growing family, and even starting to prepare their current space for the changes ahead. They attended prenatal classes, prepared the nursery, and did everything they could to ensure they were physically and mentally ready for the journey ahead. But through it all, one thing became abundantly clear. They were not just preparing for the arrival of a child. They were preparing to welcome a new chapter into their lives, a chapter that would require more than just physical space, but a deeper commitment to each other and to the family they were creating. David, who had always been the one to take charge, learned to lean on Mia even more during this time. While he still had moments of doubt, he was starting to understand that the weight of fatherhood didn't rest on his shoulders alone. Mia, too, found herself reflecting on her role as a mother, realizing that the support she gave to David and to their future family would have to come from a place of balance. They were no longer just two individuals with careers and dreams. They were becoming a family, one that would require compromise, patience, and an even deeper level of trust. It wasn't always easy. There were days when the uncertainty crept in, when they both questioned if they were ready for the changes ahead. But they always came back to each other, finding comfort in their shared vision for the future. As Mia's pregnancy progressed, the couple spent more time together, finding solace in their growing bond. David attended doctor's appointments, helping Mia navigate the ups and downs of pregnancy. They made it a point to go on walks together, talk about their hopes for their future child, and support each other through the highs and lows. The deeper they grew in their relationship, the more they realized how much they had already built together and how much they had yet to learn. One afternoon, as they sat in the park, watching Lily play with her friends, Mia turned to David, a soft smile on her face. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she asked. "It feels like just yesterday we were trying to figure out how to balance everything." David smiled, his hand resting on her growing belly. "I know. It's been a journey, but I wouldn't change a thing. We've built something strong, something real. And now, we're building a family." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the world around them, knowing that their life together was just beginning. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they were ready for them. Together, with love, understanding, and the certainty that they had everything they needed to build a future full of hope, joy, and family. As the months passed, David and Mia's lives continued to unfold in ways that felt both unexpected and incredibly fulfilling. The decision to expand their family had brought a new sense of purpose and excitement, and with it, the responsibilities that came with raising a child. They had navigated through the challenges of preparing for a growing family, and while there had been moments of doubt, there was an undeniable strength in their partnership. The arrival of their second child, a beautiful baby boy, brought joy into their lives in a way they hadn't anticipated. The first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, endless feedings, and overwhelming love. David, now a father of two, found himself balancing his career with the needs of his growing family. But with the lessons he had learned from his journey with Mia, he was ready. Mia, too, embraced her role as a mother of two, though it was an adjustment. But in those quiet moments when she held her newborn son in her arms, she knew it was all worth it. The love she and David had built was stronger than ever, and now, they were creating a life for their children that was full of love, care, and stability. David and Mia had come so far, from a time when their lives were filled with uncertainty and fear, to now, where they had built a family, a life, and a future together. It was a life they had fought for, not just for themselves, but for the family they had created. Together, they had learned the importance of trust, of letting go of control, and of always being there for each other, no matter what. As the years went on, they continued to grow and change, but their commitment to each other never wavered. They had learned to navigate life's challenges together, and every obstacle they overcame only made them stronger. And while they still faced challenges, as all families do, David and Mia knew that the foundation they had built would always hold them up. They had created a life that was more than just about work or success. It was about love, family, and the shared journey of growing together. One afternoon, years later, David and Mia sat on the same porch where they had once talked about their dreams and the future they hoped for. Their children were playing in the yard, and as they watched them, they couldn't help but reflect on everything they had been through. Mia smiled at David, her heart full. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she asked softly. David nodded, his eyes filled with love as he looked at her. "I never could have imagined this. It's more than I ever dreamed of." Mia reached over and took his hand, the years between them now filled with memories, laughter, and moments of pure joy. "We've built something beautiful, David. A family, a life, and a love that will last a lifetime." David squeezed her hand, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mia. You've been my rock, my partner, and the love of my life. I'm so grateful for you, for everything we've created together." As they sat there, hand in hand, watching their children play, they knew that their journey wasn't over. It would continue, with new challenges and new joys, but they would face it all together. They had built a life that was not just about surviving, but about thriving, about growing, loving, and living in a way that was true to who they were. And no matter what the future held, they knew. They would face it side by side, their bond stronger than ever, their love a constant reminder that together, they could handle anything life threw their way. Discover an inspiring journey filled with love, trust, and personal growth in this heartfelt story. As you dive into this tale, witness the transformation of two people learning to balance their careers, their love life, and the challenges that come with building a family. In this captivating narrative, you'll find the true essence of success not only in wealth, but in the strength of relationships and the power of trust. The journey of these two individuals reflects the values often found in millionaire stories, where the pursuit of happiness goes beyond material wealth. From overcoming past fears to creating a loving home, this story shows that the richest rewards are those found in love and connection. As their lives unfold, their experiences reflect the highs and lows of building something meaningful, something far more valuable than any financial achievement. In this touching tale, explore how millionaire stories are shaped not by money, but by the choices we make, the people we love, and the lives we create together. The lessons learned and the strength built in this journey make it clear that true wealth is found in family, love, and personal growth, proving that the most valuable millionaire stories are the ones filled with human connection and perseverance.